Let me ask you a question. Have you ever been told you weren't good enough? Have you ever been dismissed, overlooked, or pushed aside? Not because of your heart, not because of your effort, but because someone else failed to see your value. Tonight, I want to tell you a story about a woman who was fired, but in that moment of rejection, enough. She didn't lose her purpose. She found it. Her name doesn't appear in history books. Her face isn't on billboards. But her courage changed a life and reminded an entire hospital what healing really means. It was 2:17 a.m. in the emergency room, the kind of night where the lights buzz, the coffee goes cold, and the hallway echoes with urgency. The kind of night where life and death walk side by side. That's when they rolled him in. A special forces commander, battle-worn, silent, unmoving. His uniform was cut away. His body carried scars most people would never understand. The doctors focused on vitals. The nurses moved fast. And then there was her, not the loudest nurse, not the most decorated, not the one with awards on the wall. But she was the one who pulled up a chair. She didn't just check his pulse. She held his hand. She spoke to him. Even when he didn't respond, she told him where he was. She reminded him he was safe. Enough. She cleaned the dirt from hands slowly, carefully, like it mattered. And in that moment, something powerful happened. The commander stirred. His heart rate steadied. His breathing slowed. The machines didn't record it, but hope entered the room. By morning, the hospital administrators were waiting. Not with praise. Not with thanks, with a termination letter. She broke a rule. She stayed too long. She got too emotionally involved. This is a hospital, not a place for feelings. So they fired her. She walked out with her badge in her hand, her eyes heavy and her purpose questioned. 3 hours later, the commander opened his eyes. The doctor smiled and said, "You're stable. You're going to be okay." The commander scanned the room. Then he asked a simple question. "Where is my nurse?" The doctor replied, "We'll send someone." The commander shook his head. "No, not someone. The one who stayed. The one who talked to me when I couldn't talk back. The one who reminded me I was still human." The room went silent. They looked for her. The front desk didn't have her name anymore. Security said she left. The hospital director was called. And for the first time that day, the hospital didn't feel like it was in charge. The commander made it very clear, "I faced enemies in the dark. I've survived things most people can't imagine. And I'm alive because someone here chose compassion over policy. I want her back." They found her sitting outside the hospital on a bench, still in her scrubs, still holding her badge. When they told her what happened, she thought it was a mistake. But when she walked back in, the commander looked at her and said, "You didn't just treat my wounds. You reminded me why I fought to stay alive." The hospital didn't just rehire her. They promoted her. But more importantly, they changed their policy. Because here's the truth, ladies and gentlemen, we live in a world that measures success by speed, numbers, and performance. But the world is healed by something else, by presence, by kindness, by people who stay when they don't have to. That nurse didn't know who he was. She didn't know his rank enough. She didn't know his story. She only knew one thing: someone in front of her needed care. And that's the kind of person this world is starving for. Who is sitting in front of you, silent, hurting, unseen. At work, at home, in your community. You don't need a title to change your life. You don't need permission to show compassion. You don't need applause to do what's right, because smallest act of kindness becomes someone else's reason to survive. She was fired from the ER, but she was hired by something greater purpose. Compassion and the courage to care when no one was watching. And maybe tonight that's the job the world is offering you too. Thank you. Compassion over policy means choosing the heartbeat in front of you over the handbook in your hand. It means recognizing that rules are designed to guide systems, but compassion is designed to guide souls. Policies can tell you what is allowed, what is efficient enough, and what is acceptable, but they can never tell you what is right in the moment when someone's world is falling apart in front of you. Compassion is what steps forward when the manual runs out of answers. In a world built on procedures, checklists, and performance metrics, compassion becomes a quiet rebellion. It is the decision to slow down when everything around you demands speed. It is the choice to listen when everyone else is rushing to the next task. It is the courage to see a human being instead of a problem to be solved. Because at the end of the day, people do not remember how perfectly you followed a rule. They remember how you made them feel when they were at their weakest. Policy says, move on. There are others waiting. Compassion says, stay. This moment matters. Our policy draws clean lines, neat boxes, and clear boundaries. Enough. Compassion steps across those lines when someone is drowning on the other side. Doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for approval. It responds to pain the way a heart responds to a cry. Instinctively, urgently, and without calculation. Compassion over policy does not mean chaos. It does not mean recklessness. It means remembering why the policies were created in the first place. They were not written to replace humanity, but to protect it. And when a rule begins to stand in the way of healing, connection, or dignity, compassion becomes the higher law. Think about how many times in life we hide behind, that's just the rule. We say it at work. We say it in institutions. We say it in relationships. And sometimes without realizing it, we use policy as a shield, a way to avoid the discomfort of caring too deeply. Because compassion is not always convenient. It can be exhausting, emotional, and unpredictable. But it is also the one thing that turns ordinary moments into unforgettable ones. Compassion over policy is what transforms a transaction into a connection, and Feel Enough what turns a service into a story. It is what takes a routine encounter and makes it a turning point in someone's life. You may never see the full impact of it. You may never know how far your kindness travels, but somewhere long after the moment has passed, someone will still be carrying the warmth of what you chose to do. It is easy to follow a rule. It takes no courage to stay inside the lines, but it takes bravery to look at someone's pain and decide, I will not let this be just another case, another file, another number. It takes strength to care when caring costs you something, time, energy, or even approval. That is the quiet heroism of compassion. Compassion over policy means understanding that people are not problems to be processed. They are stories unfolding in real time. Each person you meet is carrying invisible battles, silent fears, and unspoken hopes. And in a single moment of genuine care, you can become a chapter in their story, the chapter where they felt seen instead of ignored, valued instead of dismissed, human instead of invisible. When you choose compassion, you send a powerful message without ever speaking a word. You say, you matter here. You matter now. And for someone who feels lost, broken, or forgotten, those unspoken words can be more powerful than any solution you could offer. Compassion over policy also changes you. It reminds you of who you are beneath your title, your role, and your responsibilities. It reconnects you to the reason you started in the first place, the reason you wanted to help, to serve, to make a difference. It brings meaning back into moments that could otherwise become routine and empty. There will always be systems. There will always be structures. There will always be rules. But there will also always be moments that demand more than compliance. Moments that ask for heart instead of protocol. Moments that call for presence instead of procedure. Enough. Those moments are invitations. Invitations to be more than efficient, more than correct, more than professional. Invitations to be human. A compassion over policy is not about breaking rules for the sake of rebellion. It is about bending toward humanity when rigidity would cause harm. It is about choosing connection over convenience, understanding over indifference, and kindness over comfort. Because long after the policies have been updated, rewritten, or forgotten, and ill enough that the impact of compassion remains, it lives in the memory of someone who felt less alone. It echoes in the life of someone who found strength in a moment of care. It survives in the quiet knowledge that when it truly mattered, someone chose to see a person instead of a process. And in the end, That is what defines the legacy we leave behind. Not how perfectly we followed the rules, but how deeply we touched the lives of the people who crossed our path. Small actions create big impact. Small actions create big impact because life is not changed by grand speeches or dramatic gestures alone, but by quiet moments that slip into ordinary days and transform them from the inside out. It is in the subtle choices, the pause before walking away, the extra second spent listening, the gentle word spoken when silence would have been easier, that the greatest ripples begin. These moments may seem insignificant at the time, but they carry a power far beyond what the eye can see. We often underestimate the weight of what we do when no one is watching. We believe that if it is not loud, not visible, and not celebrated, then it must not matter. But impact does not always announce itself. Sometimes it moves silently like a seed falling in the soil. You do not hear it land. You do not see it grow. And yet, given time, it becomes something strong enough to break through concrete. A small action is a door left open when someone feels shut out. It is a smile offered to a stranger who has forgotten what kindness looks like. It is a simple "I see you." In a world that is constantly looking past and feel enough, these moments do not make headlines, but they make lives lighter. They do not change the whole world in one day, but they change someone's world in one moment. Think about how fragile people can be in their hardest hours. A person standing on the edge of giving up does not always need a perfect solution. Sometimes they just need a reminder that they are not alone, and that reminder often comes in the form of something small, a hand held, a chair pulled closer, a voice that says, "I'm here." That is where the real impact begins. Small actions carry a unique kind of honesty. They are not performed for applause. They are not done for recognition. Enough. They happen because something inside you chooses to care. And when someone receives that kind of genuine kindness, they feel it. They know the difference between a gesture that is required and one that is offered freely. That difference can stay with them long after the moment has passed. Every great movement, every lasting change, every powerful story can be traced back to something that started small. A conversation, a decision. A single choice to act instead of remain silent. The world we see today is not built only on massive events, but on millions of tiny moments layered over time. Each one shaping attitudes, relationships, and lives in ways we rarely stop to notice. Small actions also have a way of multiplying. Kindness tends to echo. When someone experiences it, they are more likely to pass it on. A single act can set off a chain reaction traveling from person to person, place to place, far beyond where it began. You may never see the full journey of what you started, but that does not make it any less real. There is something deeply human about the way small actions connect us. They break down the invisible walls we build around ourselves. They remind us that beneath our roles, our titles, and our differences, we all share the same basic need to be seen, to be heard, and to be valued. A simple gesture can bridge a gap that words alone cannot cross. We often wait for the right moment to do something meaningful. We tell ourselves we'll make a difference when we have more time, more resources, or more confidence. But the truth is, the right moment is almost always now. The opportunity to make an impact usually arrives disguised as something ordinary. It looks like a chance to help, to listen enough, to show patience, or to offer understanding when it would be easier to walk away. Small actions also shape who we become. Every time we choose kindness, we reinforce the part of ourselves that believes in connection rather than distance. We train our hearts to respond instead of retreat. Over time, these choices build a character that naturally leans toward compassion. And that kind of character leaves a mark wherever it goes. There is a quiet beauty in knowing that you do not need to be powerful, famous, or influential to matter. You only need to be present. You only need to care. The impact of a small action is not measured by how impressive it looks, but by how deeply it is felt by the person on the receiving end. Somewhere, someone may look back on a moment with you, a brief interaction, a simple gesture, and credit it as the moment they found strength, clarity, or hope. You may never hear about it. You may never be thanked for it, but that does not diminish its value. In many ways, it makes it even more meaningful. Small actions create big impact because they remind us that change does not always arrive like a storm. Sometimes it arrives like a whisper, soft, gentle, almost unnoticed, and yet powerful enough to shift the direction of a life. In the end, it is not the size of what you do that defines its worth. It is the heart behind it. A small action fueled by genuine care can carry more power than the grandest gesture done without it. And when enough of those small actions come together, they do not just change moments, they change the world one quiet, meaningful step at a time. Presence is powerful. Presence is powerful because it speaks in a language deeper than words. It is the silent message that says, I am here with you, even when nothing else can be said. In a world that is constantly rushing forward, constantly distracted, constantly reaching for the next thing, and true presence has become rare, and because it is rare, it has become incredibly valuable. To be present is to offer someone your full attention, not just your physical body. It means setting aside the noise of your own thoughts, the pull of your phone, the weight of your schedule, and the pressure of what comes next. It means stepping into the moment as it is with the person in front of you and choosing to stay there. That choice alone can be deeply healing. Presence has a way of calming storms without ever trying to control them. When someone feels overwhelmed, afraid, or lost, they do not always need advice or solutions. Often, they just need to know they are not facing it alone. A quiet, steady presence can ground them in ways no speech ever could. It creates a sense of safety, a space where emotions can breathe instead of being pushed away. There is a unique kind of honesty in being present. You cannot fake it for long. People can feel when your attention is divided, when your mind is elsewhere, when you are waiting for the moment to end. But they can also feel when you are truly with them. When your eyes meet theirs, when your body leans in instead of away enough, when your silence feels supportive instead of empty. That kind of presence builds trust without ever asking for it. Presence is powerful because it makes people feel seen. In a world where so many feel invisible, being truly noticed can be life changing. When you listen without interrupting, without rushing to respond, without planning your next words while someone else is still speaking, you give them a rare gift. You tell them through your attention that their thoughts and feelings matter. It is easy to underestimate how deeply this can affect someone. A person who feels unheard often begins to believe they do not matter. Over time, that belief can shape how they see themselves and the world around them. But a single moment of genuine presence can interrupt that story. It can remind them that they are worthy of care, of time, of space in someone else's life. Presence also changes the quality of your own experience. When you are fully in a moment, you notice things you would otherwise miss. The subtle shift in someone's expression, the quiet emotion behind their words, the atmosphere of a room, the weight of a pause. These details add depth to your understanding and richness to your connections. Life becomes less about passing through moments and more about actually living inside them. And there is strength in staying when things get uncomfortable. Presence does not disappear when emotions rise, when conversations become difficult, or when pain surfaces. It remains. It holds the space instead of trying to escape it. That steadiness can be incredibly reassuring. It tells someone, you don't have to hide this. You don't have to go through this alone. In many ways, presence is a form of courage. It takes bravery to sit with someone else's pain without trying to fix it. It takes patience to listen when you would rather speak. It takes humility to admit that sometimes your role is not to lead or advise, but simply to be there. Yet it is in these moments of quiet support that the deepest connections are formed. Presence also creates memories that last. People may forget what you said or did enough, but they rarely forget how you made them feel in a moment that mattered. The feeling of being truly accompanied, truly supported, can stay with someone long after the details fade. It becomes part of their emotional landscape, something they carry with them to future moments. We live in an age of constant connection and yet widespread loneliness. Messages travel instantly, but meaningful connection often feels out of reach. In this environment, presence becomes even more powerful. It cuts through the noise. It stands out. It reminds us that real connection does not come from how many people can reach you, from how deeply you can reach one person at a time. Enough. Presence does not require special skills or training. It does not demand perfection. It simply asks for willingness to slow down, willingness to pay attention, willingness to care. These simple choices can transform ordinary interactions into meaningful encounters. When you choose to be present, you become a steady point in someone else's world, a place they can return to, even if only in memory, when things feel uncertain. You become part of their story enough, not because you did something extraordinary, but because you were there when it mattered. In the end, presence is powerful because it reminds us of our shared humanity. It bridges the distance between me and you and creates a moment of wuss. And in that moment, something beautiful happens. Fear softens, walls come down, and connection takes root. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not to speak, not to act, not to solve, but simply to stay. To sit in the moment, to offer your attention as a gift, because in a world that is always moving on, choosing to be present is a way of saying, "These matters, you matter." Right now. Recognition comes later because the most meaningful actions in life are often performed in silence, far away from applause, spotlight, or approval. True impact does not usually announce itself in the moment it's created. It moves quietly, almost invisibly, through the lives it touches, leaving traces that only time reveals. When you choose to do something good simply because it is good, you step into a space where the reward is not immediate but deeply lasting. There is a special kind of strength in doing what is right with knowing if anyone will ever notice. It is easy to act when praise is guaranteed, when eyes are watching, when validation is waiting at the finish line. But it takes a different kind of courage to act when there is no promise of acknowledgement, when the only witness to your choice is your own conscience. In those moments, you discover what truly drives you. Recognition coming later teaches patience. It reminds you that value is not always measured in instant feedback or public approval. Some of the most powerful contributions unfold slowly, like a story that takes time to reach its meaning. You may not see the outcome of your kindness, your effort, or your integrity right away. But somewhere, in ways you cannot always trace, it begins to shape a path forward. Think about how many people carry memories of someone who once believed in the help to help them, or stood by them when they felt alone. Often enough, the person who made the difference never knew the full weight of what they did. The recognition lived quietly in the heart of the one who was helped, sometimes for years, sometimes for a lifetime. That kind of impact does not need a stage to be real. Recognition coming later also protects the purity of your intentions. When you are not driven by the need to be seen, you are free to act from a place of genuine care. Your actions become less about how they reflect on you and more about how they affect someone else. This shift changes the entire experience of doing good. It becomes less transactional, more human. There is a quiet beauty in being part of a story without being named in it. In knowing that something you did helped someone else move forward, even if they never had the chance to say thank you. That knowledge, even when it's only a feeling rather than a fact, and deeply fulfilling. It connects you to something larger than yourself, a chain of moments and lives woven together by unseen acts of kindness. When recognition does come later, it often arrives in unexpected forms. It may not be a public thank you or a formal acknowledgement. It may come as a message years down the line, a chance encounter, or even a personal realization of how far someone has come. Sometimes it comes simply as a sense of peace, a quiet understanding that what you chose to do mattered. Even if no one said so at the time, there is also a lesson in learning to be okay to be with recognition never coming at all. Not every good deed will circle back to you, and not every effort will be noticed, but that does not lessen its worth. The value of your actions exists independently of how they are received or remembered. In many ways, this is where true integrity lives, in doing what aligns with your values, regardless of the outcome. Recognition coming later can also deepen your resilience. When you are not fueled by immediate praise, you learn to rely on something more stable, your own sense of purpose. This internal motivation can carry you through moments of doubt, fatigue, or discouragement. It becomes a quiet anchor, reminding you why you started and why you continue even when the path feels lonely enough. There is something powerful about planting seeds you may never see grow. It requires faith in the idea that what you do today can shape a future you will not fully witness. This perspective stretches your sense of time and an impact beyond to the present moment. It connects your actions to a larger story, one that continues long after you move on. Recognition, when it finally arrives, often feels different than we expect. It is not always the dramatic moment we imagine. Sometimes it is subtle, almost understated. But when it comes, it carries a depth that instant praise rarely has. It reflects not just what you did, but who you chose to be over time. In a world that moves quickly, that rewards visibility and speed, choosing to act without immediate recognition is a quiet act of defiance. It says that meaning matters more than attention, and purpose matters more than praise. It reminds you that the truest form of success is not how loudly your name is spoken, but how deeply your actions are felt. Recognition comes later if it comes at all. But the impact of what you do begins the moment you choose to do it. And in that moment, regardless of who is watching, you become part of something lasting, a ripple in the lives of others, a trace of kindness in a world that always needs more of it. Leadership isn't a title because true influence is not granted by a position, a badge, or a nameplate on a door. It is earned in moments. Quiet enough, ordinary moments where someone chooses to step forward instead of stepping back. It lives in actions, not in authority. It breathes in character, not in rank. Long before someone is ever called a leader, they become one by how they treat the people around them. We often imagine leadership as something that sits at the top of a ladder. We picture offices, power, and recognition. But real leadership moves through hallways, stands in corners, and sits beside people when no one else will. It shows up in conversations that never make headlines, in decisions that never get announced, and in support that never gets credited. It exists wherever someone takes responsibility for the well-being of another human being. A title can tell people who is in charge, but it cannot tell them who to trust. That is something you build through consistency, honesty, and care. People do not follow words on a business card. They follow the way you make them feel. They follow the example you set when things are easy, and even more when things are hard. Leadership isn't a title because it does not require permission. You do not have to wait for someone to hand you authority before you can make a difference. The moment you choose to act with integrity, empathy, and courage, you step into a form of leadership, whether you are in a classroom, a workplace, a family, or a community. There is always space to influence the atmosphere around you. A real leadership often begins with listening. It starts by paying attention to what others need, what they fear, and what they hope for. It is less about being heard and more about hearing. In that space of understanding, trust grows. And where trust grows, people feel safe to speak, to try, and to become more than they were before. There is a quiet strength in leading by example. When you show patience instead of frustration, kindness instead of indifference, and fairness instead of favoritism, you send a powerful message without saying a word. Others notice. They absorb the tone you set. Over time, your behavior becomes a kind of compass, pointing the way for those around you. Leadership isn't a title because it often shows up in the background, not the spotlight. It is the person who stays late to help someone else finish. The one who speaks up when something is wrong, even if it is uncomfortable. The one who takes responsibility when it would be easier to shift blame. These moments rarely come with applause, but they shape the culture of a place in lasting ways. True leaders create space for others to shine. They do not need to be the center of attention. They understand that their role is not to stand above, but to stand beside. They lift others up, not make themselves look taller, but because they genuinely want to see others grow. In doing so, they build something stronger and loyalty. They build belief. Enough. Leadership Leadership also reveals itself in how someone handles power, not just how they seek it. When you have influence, even in small ways, you face a choice. Use it to control or use it to serve. The leaders who leave a lasting mark are the ones who choose service. They see their role as a responsibility, not a privilege. They measure their success by the success of the people around them. There is a deep humanity in leadership that isn't tied to a title. It acknowledges that everyone has something to offer and everyone has something to learn. It invites collaboration instead of competition. It creates an environment where people feel valued for who they are, not just for what they produce. Leadership isn't a title because it can appear in the most unexpected places. It can be a child standing up for a classmate, a coworker encouraging someone who is struggling, a friend telling the truth when it would be easier to stay silent. These acts may seem small, but they carry the same essence as leadership in the largest organizations or movements, the willingness to care about the direction things are going and to do something about it. Over time, people begin to recognize this kind of leadership naturally, not because of formal announcements or promotions, but because they feel its presence. They notice who brings calm in chaos, who brings clarity in confusion, and who brings compassion in moments of stress. These are the people others turn to, not because they have to, but because they want to. Leadership isn't a title, because it is not something you wear. It is something you live. It shows up in your tone, your choices, and your consistency. It is revealed in how you treat those who can do nothing for you in return. It is defined by the values you hold when no one is watching. In the end, the most powerful leaders are often remembered not for their position, but for their presence, not for the authority they had, but for the impact they made. Their legacy lives on in the confidence they built in others, the opportunities they created, and the courage they inspired. And perhaps that is the most beautiful truth of all, that leadership is not reserved for a select few at the top. It is available to anyone, anywhere, at any moment, who chooses to step forward with empathy, integrity, and the willingness to make someone else's path a little easier to walk.